Welcome to History. Today we are going to look into the Roman Empire.
Okay, so for this deep dive, you've brought us some Roman history stuff.
Yeah, looks like we're really diving into the Roman Empire, a civilization that spanned almost 1,500 years. It's a big one.
It's massive.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's everywhere, right? Our laws, languages, architecture, it's like trying to escape gravity.
It's woven into the fabric of our world, that's for sure. So where do we even begin?
Right. It's a bit daunting. I guess, like with anything this big, we need to start at the beginning.
Exactly. To truly grasp Rome's impact, you've got to understand its origins. Even back in its early republic, they were strategic about expansion.
So they weren't just like running around with swords, conquering everything in sight.
Well, they had plenty of swords. But it wasn't just brute force. Their military, the legions, they were organized, like almost a professional army when everyone else was relying on farmers with, pitchforks.
That's a big difference. Speaking of beginnings, what about that whole Romulus and Remus story? Raised by a wolf.
Right. A myth, of course, but powerful. Legends like that tell us a lot about how a culture sees itself. That image of Romulus founding Rome, even if fictional, it speaks to their belief in destiny, in their inherent strength.
It's like their own origin story. Okay, but legends aside, what about Hannibal? Crossing the Alps with elephants. That just blows my mind.
Ah, the Second Punic War. That's where Hannibal's Carthaginian forces really challenged Rome. It's a perfect example of how Rome adapted and innovated. They faced a strategic genius, yet they learned, they refined their tactics, and ultimately, they won.
Like a real-life strategy game. Adapt or get conquered. They were resilient, strategic, but not invincible.
Sure.
Right. Things back in Rome weren't always stable and happy.
Exactly. You can't talk about the Roman Republic without mentioning Julius Caesar. The conquest of Gaul, crossing the Rubicon, we still use that phrase. But his ambition? Well, let's just say it got the better of him in the end.
Yeah, the Ides of March. It seems like Caesar's rise and fall exposed the cracks in the Republic's foundation.
That's one way to put it. Caesar's assassination wasn't just some random event. It was a symptom of a system under strain.
And this is where we get the emperors, right? It's like the Republic got a makeover, a dramatic one.
It wasn't quite so simple, though it seems that way looking back. Caesar's assassination didn't immediately lead to a single ruler. There was a power vacuum, a struggle, uncertainty.
So how do we get from that chaos to the emperors and that whole Pax Romana thing, 200 years of peace?
It was a process. And at the heart of it was Augustus, Caesar's adopted son. He knew how to play the game. Military victories, political maneuvering. He understood that real power wasn't just about force, but about creating a system.
And that's where the Pax Romana comes in.
It's part of it, yes. Augustus knew that peace wasn't just about crushing revolts. It was about creating a shared identity. Think public works, entertainment, even standardized currency.
It's like, look how good things are. Don't even think about rebelling. But they backed it up, right? This wasn't just a show.
Exactly. Augustus's reign was a golden age, but we should be clear. The Pax Romana, it wasn't about the absence of conflict, it was about managing it, creating stability for Roman culture and influence to flourish.
And flourish it did. This is where we get those iconic aqueducts, the roads, the Colosseum. Speaking of which, the Pantheon. How did they even build that dome?
Their engineering was incredible. But even with all this success, even the strongest empires faced challenges. As Rome grew, it had to manage a vast, diverse territory, and that brought new vulnerabilities.
Like a be careful what you wish for kind of thing. You conquer an empire, and suddenly you're managing a whole new set of problems.
Exactly. Governing is much harder than conquering. It needs balance, efficient administration, a unifying idea, maintaining that over centuries. Even Rome struggled with that.
Like they were juggling, right? And they're adding more and more objects. Eventually, something's got to give. What were some of those things? What started to really cause problems for them?
Well, the economy was a big one. They needed more resources, more people to keep expanding all those wars. Maintaining that huge military, it cost a fortune, and that meant more taxes.
Oof, yeah, nobody likes that. And then, of course, you've got those barbarian invasions we always hear about. It's like trying to relax when everything around you is falling apart.
That's actually a good comparison. It wasn't just random chaos. Those invasions, they were often a result of pressure. People migrating, pushed westward, all these forces Rome couldn't control.
So it wasn't just this simple story of Rome versus the barbarians.
Right. History's rarely that simple. It's more complicated, more interesting than that. You have internal struggles, external pressure. All these factors chipped away at Rome's foundations.
Like a perfect storm, in a way.
You could say that. It all culminated in 476 CE, the fall of the Western Roman Empire. But even with all that, Roman influence didn't just disappear.
That's what gets me. How do you explain that? It's like they lost, but they still won, in a way.
It's because their culture was that powerful. The Western Roman Empire might have crumbled, but its legacy, that continued on for centuries.
Like a ghost, still haunting the world.
Kind of. It's more accurate to say that Rome didn't fall, it transformed.
Okay, I like that. So what are some of those things, those pieces of Rome that just stuck around?
Well, Roman law, for one. Their legal principles, their emphasis on written law, applied consistently. That became hugely influential. Even today, that stuff matters.
The Romans inventing bureaucracy for centuries to come.
Something like that. And then there's language. Latin might not be spoken the same way now, but its impact, undeniable. It's everywhere.
Romance languages, Spanish, French, Italian, they all come from Latin. Even English, it borrows heavily from it.
It's like this linguistic echo through time. It's actually
Yeah.
pretty cool when you think about it.
It really is. And then, of course, architecture. Arches, domes, all that stuff screams Rome.
I was just thinking about that. You can't escape it.
They were amazing innovators. The Colosseum, the Pantheon's dome, they used new materials, new techniques. Their buildings lasted. But it wasn't just about being practical either. It was about sending a message.
A look at us, we're Rome kind of message.
Exactly. Power, permanence, order. Think about their public works. The aqueducts, the roads, those were statements, reminders of Rome's reach. We were here, we built this, deal with it. And it worked. I mean, we're still talking about them. But it goes beyond the physical stuff, right? We're obsessed with their stories, too.
Absolutely. Gladiators, emperors, political intrigue, those stories have this timeless quality. Ambition, betrayal, power struggles, it never gets old.
Like the original soap opera, but with, more togas.
Maybe. But honestly, I think our fascination with them goes deeper than just entertainment. We see ourselves in them, in their struggles, power, identity, building a just society.
It's like looking in a mirror, but it's reflecting back ancient Rome.
Exactly. When we study Rome, we're not just learning about history, we're gaining insights into the human condition. Those themes, those challenges, they're still relevant.
It makes you wonder, what will people in the future think of us? Like, will they be digging through our internet history, looking at our memes and stuff?
It's funny to think about. We usually focus on the big picture of history, don't we? Empires, battles, all that. But what if the important stuff is, like, the everyday things, how we talk to each other, the stories we tell?
Right. Like, I bet the Romans didn't think their plumbing was going to be a big deal in the future, but here we are talking about their aqueducts.
Exactly. It's often those little choices, those everyday details that really tell you about a culture. We may not be building colosseums, but how we deal with our own problems, that's going to matter in the long run.
It's kind of wild when you think about it like that. We're all part of this huge story, even if we don't realize it.
I think so. The Roman Empire might be gone, but it's still with us, in our laws, languages, even how we think about civilization itself.
It's like their story became part of our story.
And just like we learned from them, from their successes and failures, people in the future will look back at us and learn from us. Hopefully they learn the right lessons.
Right. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Indeed.
So until next time, keep exploring those dusty old books or, whatever you're into. Because, as we've seen today, the past, it's never really past.
Well said. And who knows what fascinating stuff we'll uncover in our next dip dive.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Welcome to History. Welcome To is dedicated to exploring new technology to create informative and entertaining media. If you would like to create a podcast like this, be sure to visit Google Notebook LM. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe for more. Leave a comment if you have an idea for an episode that we should start researching. Thank you for listening.